Wow. But now I gotta sneeze. But
Oh,
it's like, is it gonna happen? It is. It did. It did happen. All right, that was great.
I think that's the beginning of the clip.
Oh,
So
no.
let me open up Twitch, see if it says we're live yet. It does say we're live.
Yeah, it does.
I think I just turned it on to hear you sneeze. It did.
That's great.
All right, let me post a message in Slack that we're live. All right, if you are in the chat room, say hello, please. I am very excited that we have solved at least two audio problems, and I'm hopeful that everything's going to hold itself together this time. We're using Skype this time instead of FaceTime, and I've heard great things about Skype, and I've heard bad things about Skype. What I have noticed in about the 20 minutes that we've been doing this is my computer fans have kicked on, and we'll see if they stay on throughout the whole live stream. In fact, the video looks really jagged.
Oh yeah.
It's not dropping too bad. Everything looks smooth. Okay. Someone's saying it does look a little choppy. Is the audio good at least? I hope it's prioritizing that.
You're um you're choppy through Skype, but I don't. I haven't checked through the stream.
Yeah. My poor computer. Oh, good. The audio is fine. Okay. All right. We will continue going with this then. Someone just asked in Slack if it was mandatory to watch live. It is not mandatory to watch live, um, although it's fun. I mean, it's at least fun for Anthony and me. All right, so we want to talk about four things tonight. We're going to try to keep it within an hour, but I have a feeling we might go over. The first thing that we want to talk about is how to start writing HTML. And we're going to show it two ways. We're going to show you the old way, the hard way, the way I learned to build websites, and I think the way Anthony learned to build websites.
Ooh.
Um, and then we're going to, I promise, we'll keep that as short as possible because what I really do want to show you is how you can use a text editor of your choice. We're going with Atom this semester to try to save you a lot of time as you're writing code. Then we're going to take a look at the tag troubleshooting activity that you're supposed to do this week and maybe practice with one or two of those. And we'd also like to talk about chapter 3, which is about big concepts in web design, some trends. So let me see if I can get our computer screen going here, Anthony. You know what? We can keep both of our heads floating in the corner. So the first assignments have you writing code. And I want, like I said, I want to show you the old way of doing it with a program called TextEdit on the Mac. If you're on a PC, you can also write code with a program that came with your PC with Windows. It's called Notepad, and I wanted to show it tonight, but it's hard to remote control a PC at the same time that you're Skyping and live streaming and everything else. So instead, I took some screenshots, and I'll make sure that these are available in the presentation that we post as well. This is an example of an HTML file that I wrote in Notepad. I typed every character myself. I'm very proud of that. You type in the code, you cross your fingers and save it as something like index.html, and you open it up. And this is what I've been doing for about 20 years of my life. I've been writing code in one place, opening it up in a browser, and hitting refresh to see it. You're going to learn how to do that today. It doesn't have to be as tedious as what this example was, but I might as well show you what that's like. So let me open up TextEdit here, crank up my font size. So if you wanted to build a web page, you would have to know how to add the beginning and the end of the web page, the same tags that every web page needs. And this is actually the beginning of chapter 4, exercise 1. I'm going to make an example that's not out of the textbook. and just type in a simple page here. It all starts with some basic tags. It starts with the HTML tag. The HTML tag is an example of one that has an opening and it has a closing. The content of your web page goes inside the HTML tags. There's a couple regions that you create inside of a web page. Really, it's just two. There's the head, which contains information about your web page, about metadata. And then there's the body section, which is actually what gets displayed on the page. And to prove that to you, I'm going to put in the next required tag, which is title. This is the title. I'm going to close this. Notice how I'm typing every single character. I've kind of got muscle memory here. I know that the less than sign is the beginning of a tag and the greater than sign is the end of it. I know that the closing tag has one more character. It's that /, which appears on the same key as the question mark here in America. And like I said, the body is where the text that you see on the web page goes. So I'm going to say hello world. And I'm not going to be able to save it, unfortunately. But if I were to save this, I'd call it as like index.html or mypage.html. And this would be a web page. I think I did that in about a minute. This actually took me a lot longer, not too long ago. And I was still using Notepad, I think, for the first couple years that I was building web pages. Anthony, did you use TextEdit or Notepad back in the day?
Yes. I mean, that's what you would do. There wasn't any kind of other method.
Yeah.
The 90s.
Black text on a white screen. It's pretty bland, but it's serviceable. Well, the world has gotten better. Believe it or not, I've had students that complete the web design course typing out the web pages like this, but it is really easy to miss a character, mix up characters, forget to close a tag. So let me introduce you to your new best friend. It's called Atom, and there's a link to Atom in Moodle. Let me just Google it. Atom text editor. It has a lovely green icon. It's by the people that make GitHub, and I think that's now owned by Microsoft. So technically Microsoft owns Atom. It's a free download for Mac or Windows, and I think it's available for Linux as well. You can get it running on your computer. If you can't get it running on your computer, mention or contact us on Slack, and we will find something that will help you, because you don't want to have to type out every character. So get it installed on your computer and then open it up. This is what Atom looks like. It's already better than that blank white window. It's at least a lovely shade of gray. I'm going to crank up the font size here real quick. When you open up a blank file, it really does look a lot like Notepad because not much special is going on. It thinks that this is a plain text document. If you were to open it up, or open up an existing HTML file, it'd get you to where you need to go. What I want to show you is in the bottom right-hand corner, there is a place in the screen, and you know what? I need to turn off our floating heads. Hold on just a second. Okay, so in the bottom right-hand corner, if I hover over here, there's a place that says plain text. It tells you that this is like the grammar or the syntax that this document is written in. You can actually search for HTML in here, and then you get some superpowers. Then you can just type in the word HTML, and notice that as I type, I get some autocomplete magic going on underneath where I'm typing, and all I have to do is hit tab or enter, and Atom will auto replace what I was typing, the word HTML, with all the tags needed to create a web page. I don't even have to memorize what those 7 or 8 tags are anymore, because I just type HTML, hit tab, and the rest is there. And it will move my cursor, my character that I'm typing on, around as I hit tab. It'll advance. So I can get right to that title set of tags within 2 or 3 tabs. So let me make this my first page. If I hit tab again, it puts me into the body. And let's say I wanted that hello world to be an H1. I just type H1, hit tab, hello world. And if I want to make a paragraph, I can hit P and hit tab, and it puts the opening and closing tags right next to each other. And you could type in whatever you want. You could paste in the code from chapter 4. However, you could also use something that's built into Atom called lorem ipsum. I love showing this. Do you know what lorem ipsum is, Anthony?
Yeah,
You've seen it? All right. So if
yeah.
I do you know how to speak it? Are you fluent?
It's very similar to Latin.
I think it was inspired by that, right? Maybe it was just whatever keys were available. If I hit enter, it replaces that little bit of text with a much longer section of text. So I've made a web page, and if you were timing me, I think this is a lot faster. We're at least building a more complete web page than we built with Notepad. And let me bring our video back onto the screen here. Now that I have it, I want to save it. I just go up to the File, Save menu. I'm really big into keyboard shortcuts. Command S or Control S on Windows is going to let you save a file more quickly. I recommend making a folder for your homework. So I'm going to make a folder called My Chapter 4, and then I'm going to call it index.html. Oh, computer's beach balling. There we go. All right, so I saved it. Notice how Atom will, on the left-hand side, show you a list of all the files that you have in that folder. This is going to be really handy as you start working on the chapter exercises. Let me try to open up my desktop. There's my desktop. Okay. On my desktop, I made a folder called My Chapter 4, and I'm just going to double click on that index file. It's going to open up with your default web browser. In this case, that's Chrome for me. And we made a very simple web page called Hello World. This is what web design is. It's a little bit of coding. Let's add an H2. Let's add another H2. I keep typing H3. Let's try H2. Heading 3. And then you come back to your browser. You can use the Command tab. That's what brings up this long list of all my apps to go back between two screens. And when you're in the browser, you just need to refresh. There's a refresh button in the toolbar, but you can also hit either F5 on Windows, or on the Mac, it's Command R to refresh, and your new content appears. And you're a web developer. That's literally what I did about 1,000 times today at work. Is there anything that you would say about that flow, Anthony, that we should share?
Yeah. You just have to realize that both applications are pointing to the same file, but only one of those applications allows you to edit the file. The other one is translating the file to something that we're seeing. So if you make a change on one, you have to save it before the browser can get the change, and it gets the change through a refresh. So there's a lot of times where you can go back and forth and you don't see the changes, and it's just because you forgot to refresh.
Or you forgot to save, or something,
Yeah.
one of the above.
I did want to ask you though. There's obvious reasons why we're using Atom, but in terms of your text editor, why not use Microsoft Word?
Was that in the chat?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. There have been people who have made web pages with Word. I will tell you, it never ends in anything but tears. Word is really meant for making documents that are printed. And Word does something like HTML underneath the covers. Like, it needs to know where the bold begins and the bold ends, just like we need to know where a tag opens and a tag closes. But Word has been around so long that their markup, or their way of making documents, is not HTML. And so any effort that Microsoft has put into taking a Word document and turning it into a web page always ends up with lots of extra tags. So Microsoft themselves makes other tools for editing web pages, including, I mentioned how Atom is now owned by them. They make another text editor that I think I have linked in Moodle called Visual Studio Code. If you take Web Design 2, we're likely going to use that because it has some different features that are really cool too, and it's a little bit faster when you start working on bigger sites. There are so many people that have their own favorite text editor. I saw people in the chat room mention Notepad++, which I used for a while when I was on Windows. Um, I personally have two favorites that are Mac only. One is TextMate. I love that text editor. It's great. I think it's still around and free. Oh, and Sublime. Sublime is not Mac only. It's available for Windows too, but I use those quite a bit as well. It's kind of crazy to think that people have these preferences about how to write plain text, but we do. Um, and there are people that will code on the command line, which I think we've got someone in the chat room who was talking about that, which is pretty fun. So I hope that this demo was enough to introduce you to Atom. You will be able to complete Chapter 4, all the exercises with Atom. They're going to go so much faster. Wherever they have you start typing an HTML tag, just start typing in Atom. You can drop that less than sign that begins the tag and just start typing the name of the tag. Like if you want to insert an image, just type img or even just im, and you see that this autocomplete allows you to use the arrow keys up and down to select what you want. You hit enter on the image and it's going to automatically put in the attributes, like the pieces of information that you have to add into the tag, automatically for you, and move your cursor there. So when you add an image, which you do with the Black Goose Bistro logo, you need to put that in the source attribute. And attributes are just pieces of information that configure the image. They have to be surrounded by these quotation marks. There's an equal sign, and then the name of the attribute. Anything else we should say about Atom, Anthony?
No. Well, just that first step, it's important to identify the document type. And if you forget that first step, you're going to run into some issues.
Oh, you're saying like if the autocomplete isn't working?
Well, if for example, when we later work on CSS and you didn't identify the document as CSS, you won't have all of those tags to be able to search through. So you have to say that it's an HTML document so that it provides the appropriate dictionary.
Good point. And I'm going to hide our floating heads again here. Go back to the computer screen. Just to point that out because it's easy to miss. At the bottom right, it'll say HTML or plain text or CSS. That brings up this search dialog, and you can actually tell Atom that this is an HTML document. If Atom's not working the way you'd expect, I bet that's the problem, just like Anthony said. All right, are you ready for something fun, Anthony?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we have an assignment in Moodle, which I always get some funny looks about. I used to do this on printed pieces of papers in a computer lab. I called it the HTML tag troubleshooting challenge. And what I'm trying to prove to everyone is that tags in HTML are not that difficult, that you can actually find errors, you can write it a lot easier than you might imagine. What I noticed was that my students were always hung up on memorizing what all the tags were. And to be honest, with a tool like Atom and with Google, you can find the tag that you need to write. But what they lose sight of are the concepts that you need to keep in mind, like opening and closing tags, self-closing tags. And so I wanted to develop a skill where you start reading HTML, but in your mind's eye, you're actually picturing what that web page is going to look like. So that's what inspired this activity. And it's listed in Moodle. It's a link. You'll actually go to a Google Doc. Let me pull it up here. I opened it already on my screen here. This Google Doc, you are not allowed to write in. So first things first, in order to access it, you probably need to be logged in with your Mid account. I've gotten a few people who I think might have been logged in with their own personal Google account, like on a phone or a laptop. You need to be logged in with your Mid account in order to access these documents. Last week, when we did the domain name or the URL challenge, you had to actually write inside an existing Google Doc. And this one's different. You are not allowed to write in here. What you need to do is actually make a copy that's your own. So in Google Docs, there is a file menu, and you can go down to make a copy. And this is going to show up in your drive, so call it what you want. I'm going to call mine Winter 2019 Tag Challenge. You know what? I'm going to put my name in it, and I would recommend that you put your name in yours as well. So whenever you're sharing it with Anthony or myself, you're communicating your name to us as well. And I'm going to put this in my Google Drive underneath. I think I've got a folder for this semester. Yeah. 2019 winter. All right, so I'm going to click OK, and it's opening up a new tab. It's making a copy of the document, and this is owned entirely by me. So I can type in it. No one else is going to be able to type in it. And we're going to walk through a few of these challenges today. But what I want to skip to next is how you turn this in. I'm just waiting for the web page to load still. There we go. When you're ready to turn this in, it's a two-step process. It disappeared on me. Are there any questions in the chat room while we're waiting?
Just a yikes, but I don't know what that was referring to.
I'm saying yikes. My computer's
There's
upset.
plenty of yikes moments. So.
Okay, there's a blue share button. I might not be able to click on it yet, but it's there. So the first step is to share it. You need to share it so that Anthony and I can access it. And rather than typing our names in, which you can totally do, there's an easier way. If it would load. Sharing is unavailable at this time. That seems...
Gesundheit.
Oh, that seems pretty terrifying. Okay, so when the share interface opens, there is an option that says Get Shareable Link in the top right. Click on that, and by default, it's going to say anyone at Mid-Michigan College that has this link can view it. Let me see if I can zoom that a little bit here. That didn't help too much. So that's the default option. That is totally cool. The next step is for you to click Copy Link, and now you have a link that you can paste into Moodle where you would turn in this assignment. And then when Anthony and I go to open it up, we'll just click that link and we'll be able to see it. So that's how you would turn it in when you're all done. Okay? The other things that you can do to help us out are put your name on the front page. So let's put Brandon's name in here. The second slide on here has the instructions. What I'll tell you, we've already gone through most of these instructions. We already made our own copy. We typed in our name. The way this assignment works is I put sample HTML code on each one of these slides. And to prove to you that you can start reading it and figuring out what it's doing, you're going to be trying to spot the error in the code. The way you communicate that error is you're going to bold it or highlight it or do something to point it out in the code. And then in the bottom part of Google Slides, there's a way that you can write speaker notes. I'd like you just to write a sentence or two about what was wrong that you found right in there. So what is the error? How you would fix it? And the bonus question here that I think is worth considering is, what do you think the browser would show? Because humans have been coding HTML by hand for decades, browsers originally had to be very forgiving because some people would forget tags or type them differently, or each browser would work a little bit differently than the others. So they tried to be lenient on humans that were typing in code. So there are going to be some tags, some errors, like a missing tag or something that might make the page look a lot different than it should, but at least it's going to try to show something. So if you need help answering this, this is where you could actually copy the code, put it into the web page, and see what it looks like. And then the last instruction on here is how to share it, which we just went over. So let's go to my instructor example here, Anthony. So I am on slide 3. Are you able to get in the doc still, Anthony?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So in this instructor example, I bolded the head section. When I talked about the head and the body, I told you that the body is what appears on the web page. The head is usually just information about the web page. It doesn't really show up except it shows up in one place. It shows up in these tabs up at the top. The way that you know what tab you want is because the author of the document or the web page provided a title, and that title is information that goes in the head. So I bolded this head section because every web page needs a title, and this one did not have a title. So to indicate that, I just selected it and I made it bold, and then down here in the bottom, I wrote that the title element is missing. So I bolded where it will go. A browser shows the page title in the tab bar. Oh, it also shows it when it's printing and when you're trying to bookmark a web page. If you've ever tried to add a page to your favorites, the title becomes really important there. I mentioned that our textbook says that every HTML page needs a title, but in my testing, the web page still opened up and displayed the content, but the tab didn't show a title, it showed the URL. So let's demonstrate that one. I'm just going to copy this code, go into Atom, and I'm going to make a new web page, just paste it in. I'm going to call it error or instructor error.html. Let's open that up in Chrome. So like I said, it still said hello world, but up in the tab bar, instead of saying anything helpful, it just says the name of the file, which is instructor error.html. So that was an instructor example, pretty easy. Let's go on to error number 1, and I'm going to put Anthony in the hot seat here. Can you see the code pretty well on slide 4?
Yeah.
So what does it look like this web page is trying to do?
Well, let's see. We've got, oh, I just jumped slides here.
And if you're in the chat room, feel free to volunteer what you think's wrong with this.
So we're showing our favorite colors. Looks like there's a list with 3 items, and it's not going to be a numbered list. It's just going to have bullets. Looks like we've got all of our necessary HTML tags. We've got our head and our HTML tag, and we've got the body.
Yeah, we had the head, the body, and we just talked about the title. It looks like this page does have a title. That's cool.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So nothing stands out to you yet, right?
Well, I'm seeing something.
You're seeing something. All right, I'm going to copy it, though, because let's go through the exercise. If I paste this into Atom, and I tell Atom that it's HTML, there's a cool feature that Atom has built into it that I kind of glossed over. It shows the line numbers on the left-hand side, but it also allows you to use these little carets or these chevrons, these drop-down arrows, to fold and collapse different sections. So you can actually close the HTML tag. You can close the ordered list. You can close the body up and reopen it. And the way this works is that, HTML usually requires 2 tags, an opening tag and a closing tag. And Atom is smart enough to know to look for those, and then it allows you to fold the start to the end, which is pretty nice, so that you can just focus on what you want. What I would say is if I try to fold, there's this arrow that appears next to the H1, and it's not doing anything. So that's interesting. There's another feature of Atom that I love. This might not show up in the video, but if I click on any tag, it underlines in light blue the corresponding closing tag. So if I click on the HTML, the bottom HTML is underlined. If I click on the body, they're matched up. Now let's draw our attention to the H1. I see someone's on to us in the chat room. If I put my cursor on there, it does not underline in blue. So I think what we've discovered here is maybe there's a missing tag. So we've already tried this. Let's save it and see what the web page looks like. So this is going to be error1.html. What do you see on this web page, Anthony? Can you see my screen? I guess it's probably pretty delayed for you.
There's a delay, but I'm familiar with what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
So it looks like, even though I can't see it yet, but everybody else can, it looks like everything's super big.
Super big. It's as big as a heading, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think's wrong, Anthony?
Well, I think as people have pointed out, without closing that H1 tag, everything after it is going to be a header one.
You got it. So I'm going to add the closing H1 and then come back over here and refresh. That's what it's supposed to look like. It's supposed to be my top three favorite colors without shouting those colors. So we found one of them. There's something else that we could use to troubleshoot this. Let me get rid of that closing H1. How do you know if the code that you've written is correct? Well, computer programs can help you with that, like Atom. There's actually an old school way of checking HTML and CSS that we're going to be using throughout the semester. I think actually the end of chapter 4 has you use it too. It's called the HTML validator. Let me Google HTML validator. It's actually made by the W3C. They're the people that actually help define what HTML tags we would have available to us, and they set the standards that the browser makers try to use. You can use this validator, and I encourage you to, because at several points throughout the semester, you're going to be graded on errors in your HTML, and I'm going to use the validator to grade it. I think you should use the validator to test it yourself before you turn anything in. So there's a couple ways that you can use it. There's 3 tabs. If it was hosted on a website, you could type the URL in here. You could upload your file. So I could go find that HTML file that I just saved and choose it and upload it. There's the 3rd tab, though, which is perfect for this scenario where it lets you type in the HTML. And you don't have to retype it. You can use copy and paste. So here are a few more keyboard shortcuts that I use all the time. Command A on the Mac or Control A on Windows will select everything, and then Command C will copy. I'm going to paste with Command V or Control V on Windows, and I'm going to hit the check button. So the validator came back not with one error, it came back with several. Now the validator is just doing the best it can to tell me if there are problems. Let me zoom in a little bit here. It's actually telling me that the OL, the ordered list, can't be a child element of an H1. So it's not telling me that I forgot to close the H1. But if I read the next error, it's saying it saw the closing body tag, but there was still something that was unclosed. So there should be enough hints here for you to realize that there's something wrong before the OL tag, and it's probably a tag that hasn't been closed. If you have a lot of errors in an HTML document, I would focus on just like the first 1 or 2 errors, because as you fix those problems, the other errors are going to probably go away as you do this. So if I go back and I type in that missing H1, let's rerun that code through the validator by pasting it in and hitting check. And it says no errors or warnings to show. Hooray. We did one. You want to do another, Anthony?
Yeah.
All right. Let's skip down to... Yeah, this is a good one. This is going to be even harder to read on the screen, so I'll be pasting it into Atom. This is error 2, slide 5, Anthony, if you want to pull it up.
Yep.
I'm going to paste it into Atom in a new file and call it error2.html. So what tricks do you think might be helpful from what you've seen in Atom to help out here, Anthony?
Well, if we click on one of the opening tags, we can make sure that all the tags are properly closed.
Okay, so let's do that. The body looks like it's matched up. The header, the H1 this time is there. If I click on nav, it's there. Main, footer, the paragraph, the heading. Okay, so nothing's coming out to me here. If I click on the small matches up. If I click on the eye matches up. So nothing's really standing out to me here. What else can we do to try to find this?
Well, if we go by the previous one, we make sure that elements like title are there and that we've got all the elements we need. I see an HTML tag. I see a head,
Yep.
body.
Yep. Good.
We've
Good.
got some extra ones we haven't seen before, and we verified they're all closing. Main and footer, we haven't seen those before. So maybe this might be one to look at to see if it's okay in the browser, or we could do a verification on the code.
Yeah, let's open up in the browser. You said that first. Nothing really stands out to me here. You know, I see my headings. I don't see text that's super big on the rest of the page. So I don't think we're looking at missing tags. And I even said in the notes that it's super subtle. So I think it would probably be a good time for us to copy this into the validator. You know, when in doubt. And you might
Well,
have the validator bookmarked. I just Google it every time. So I'm going to go click
while
on.
you're copying, when Adam saves it, does Adam add the HTML extension to the file, or do you have to type the name of your file .html from Adam?
I think if you've I think it's best to make sure the .html is there. Atom is allowed to open up any text document or any CSS or HTML file. So adding the .html is important. What I'll tell you is it might look like it's already there by default if you had already selected that HTML syntax from the bottom right. So I'm going to click check now that I've pasted this in here. So it comes back with two problems. The end tag small violates nesting rules and no I element in scope, but an I end tag is seen. So let's pinpoint where that was. I think that was towards the bottom, line 21. Ooh, did someone get it in the chat?
Yeah.
Sweet. I like when they beat us to it, Anthony, because we're just kind of dilly-dallying here, and all the coders are going to tell us how to fix it. So what's wrong? We open a small, we open an I, and I see the closing tags. What do you think's wrong, Anthony?
It's from Ghostbusters. You can't cross the streams. If you were to connect those tags, the opening tag to the closing tag, both sets, the streams would cross, and that would be bad.
I think it's this week in your journal. I ask you to try to describe HTML tags. I've had students come up with great metaphors for these. My favorite of all time has to be that it's like Jurassic Park. If you open a gate, you close it behind you. And you have to do it in the right order, otherwise, like the Velociraptors are gonna get you. I like the Ghostbusters reference too. But the gist of it is a browser is reading through these tags and it's doing exactly what you say. It reads.
It's Dave Law. All right, that one's good. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that was pretty good.
If we move, or sorry, if a browser triggers or hits the closing small, it's going to close that small tag that it opened over here, and it's going to automatically close what other tags are opened in the meanwhile. So the browser already kind of assumed that you were done with the I tag, and then all of a sudden after that it encounters another closing I tag, and it's basically saying, what in the world, why are you closing another tag? That's what the validator is coming back at you with, and that's kind of how browsers work. In the end, did this prevent the web page from showing up correctly, Anthony?
No, I don't think it. I don't think it did.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes browsers can work without
That
it
that begs
correct.
the question: if it looks good in the browser, isn't it? Isn't it right?
Oh man, that's philosophical. Um, it would not pass the validator, so in some projects you might lose points still. Uh, I will tell you that mistakes happen. If you ran web pages from the mid website through a validator, I'm sure you'll find a few errors. This is on a whole spectrum of whether things are right or not. This is probably low stakes, but we'll explain why the nesting of these tags is more important even a few weeks from now when we look at another web design tool. From a browser standpoint, this is incorrect code, but a browser is also very, very forgiving,
So
perhaps more forgiving than your instructor.
is more unforgiving than this one. Okay, you just totally stole my line.
Oh, I did? I'm sorry.
Totally cool.
All right, we did another one. This is probably one of the hardest ones to find, so I'm glad we did it together. Um, let's see if we can. You want to do one more before we move on, Anthony?
Yeah, but we got a pretty good question. Is there a limit to how many things can be nested within a set of tags? Can
Ooh.
you tags within tags within tags? Is there
Yeah, if you look at the mid website, we have thousands of tags inside of tags. Everything, if you look at an HTML document, everything is within the HTML tag. So browsers were built to have a lot of nested tags, and all tags lead back up to that HTML tag. I am not
so
aware of a limit.
there's really no limit that we're aware of, but we haven't really tested it to millions of tags.
I haven't. I mean, I've written some software that generates a web page, and it has what's called an infinite loop where it never finishes writing the page. And I think the browser just kept trying to show more and more information. I'm not sure what actually happened because I kind of canceled it before it finished. I didn't have the patience to wait forever.
That was
Oh, someone was asking what slide that last one was. That was
yeah.
slide number 5. It's the one that has my instructor hint on it.
Is that program still running?
Ooh, it might be. It might be running on the old Spikehorn server.
I feel like that's what started Skynet.
Probably. Okay, we're gonna find one more. Let's jump around here. Oh, I don't like that one. I'm trying to find errors that I make a lot. 9's a good example. Oh, this is super hard.
9?
Yeah, error 5 on slide 8. Slide 8. Maybe it's not super hard. I think it's hard. It's very subtle to me. I'm going to call this error 5.html. So you can use all those cool atom tricks to click around. You're not going to find any missing tags. You're not going to find any out of order tags. You're going to find something wrong with just one thing on the page. And let's see if it shows up when I open it in a browser. If I zoom it up, one of these things is not like the others. What's standing out to you, Anthony?
Well, it looks like there might be a syntax error in there.
Why do you say that?
Because we've got this tag we haven't seen yet. It's not like the other 3.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot. You can't see my screen.
No, I'm looking at the slide. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, in the Twitch stream, you see the web page now, right?
Yeah, now I see the web page, and so we see that there's not a link on contact.
There's not a link on contact. I like this one. I throw it in because hyperlinks are weird, but they're like a critical thing for you to know how to use and make, because you never have just one web page. You have a web page that links to a few other web pages. That's how it all starts. So the tag for making links, and this is probably already in our HTML tag database in week 2, is the anchor tag, the A tag. And the anchor tag requires more than just an opening and a closing, because that kind of tells you where the link is, the clickable part. It requires that you tell it where it's pointing to. And the attribute for that is weird. It's href or href. I don't know if it's silent or if you just say href. But that's the hyper.
It's href.
The hypertext reference, the HTML reference. It's something, right? This is the URL or the file name that you're linking to. So what's wrong on the code here, Anthony? What did I do? Why is the contact link different?
It looks like that it should be href if we wanted it to actually work.
Yeah, let's change that.
The anchor tag with the link in it doesn't seem to provide a link.
Yeah. So why did I make this error? Well, I am building a link, so inevitably I will forget that it's the anchor tag, forget what the attribute is, or any one of those pieces. Oh man, Anthony, I need you to read the chat room. Our students are the best this semester. Check yourself before you href yourself.
Oh, that's awesome.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
This is the best.
yes, that's pretty good. But there's also a question in here. So we've only been doing HTML. This is only the second week. How can we possibly spot something like this? We're not familiar with these tags. Well, how do you expect me to figure out what's wrong with all this stupid code? What am I supposed to do? I don't know what an href or a link is. How would I know that? Your
Totally fair.
expectations are ridiculous. What should I do?
What is this word for word the question that was in the chat?
No. I'm totally interpreting the question.
So this activity, I hope, is tricking your mind from just blindly typing what you see to trying to engage with what's written in the code. Like that's the only way that you're going to understand the code is to pick it apart. And this is just another way for you to think about the code. And what I'm hoping you're doing is trying to start seeing not the code but the result of the code, like what we just did in the browser. In your mind, I hope you're starting to see what it looks like you connect that a link is something that's clickable and a heading is bigger than the other text. Some of the tags don't really change what it looks like, and that's okay, but you can understand the principles of opening and closing a tag. That's really important. So you can check that. And it's not something that you have to memorize and just see all of a sudden. Like Anthony and I went through several different techniques for finding it, and Adam provides a few of those. If you like being able to open and close code, go for it in Adam. If you like being able to click on a tag and having it underline where its a sibling tag is, that'll help you too. If you like the validator, if you want to start understanding what those error messages are, you can use that. If you want to type it all in yourself from scratch rather than copying and pasting, I have students do that, and that's totally cool too. Everyone learns differently, and this assignment is just tricking your mind to think about it differently. So does that answer your
Yeah,
fundamental question?
I think that when you start authoring your own code, you're going to run into this where something is wrong. It's not working the way you expect it to work, and frustration ensues. Use the tools that you have. You might not be able to spot it visually. If you look at a lot of code, eventually it's a lot easier to spot where there's problems. But if you can't spot it, use those other tools. Use the validity checker. Use the browser to see what kind of results you're getting. But sometimes you just need to stand up and walk away from the computer, take a little break, and come back and look at the problem again. But don't get frustrated if there's errors. We all have errors. It's part of it.
Every one of these slides is an error that your instructor has made dozens of times. Honestly, the one that has the em tag spelled backwards is me. Sometimes I type things backwards. It just happens, and it looks right. What I like about that example, I'm not going to show it, is if you paste it into something like Atom, it has no idea what the me tag is, so it doesn't color code it. Like Atom is going to help you out with this, and that's why we're showing it to you. While we were talking, there was another good
Really.
question in the chat room about if it matters that this isn't indented the same. The answer is no, it doesn't matter. Actually, there are web pages. There are authors that actually believe in removing all the white spaces from an HTML file to make it even faster to download over the internet. It's called minification. And actually, our new website that we're building at Mid does that for us automatically. So it's actually really hard to read the code for some web pages as a result. But the white space, that's what we call those new lines and the spaces and the tabs, that is purely for the benefit of the humans. And some humans, like me, really want everything indented really nicely. Some humans don't mind. I think there are ways with Atom to actually get it to auto indent for you. If you were typing this in yourself, you'll notice that it will tab in automatically for you, which will try to get you on the right path. But the answer is no. It doesn't matter how it's indented. Uh, it only matters to you.
Well, but your audience might not just be the browser. Your audience might be somebody else who needs to edit the website at a future date. Maybe that's not you. So the keeping your code neat is something that somebody else is going to appreciate.
Definitely. And I had a student already send me a picture of code that they needed help with. So I appreciated that they were using Atom and I could see the color coding and it was indented. So that author or the user might be your instructor, and I appreciate indentation. There's one more question.
Oh, nice.
Isn't the B tag deprecated? Ooh, that's a good word. I love deprecated. I know some people often switch it out for depreciated, and that it has a similar context, but deprecated is the technically right term. It means that it was left behind. And if you read the W3 guidelines, the bold tag should not really be used for bolding anymore. Instead, what you should do is emphasize or make text strong to convey meaning as to why you're making it bold. Because bold, in Word especially, it doesn't mean anything to computers. It just changes what it looks like. And I'm going to mention in the chapter 3 slides that accessibility is important at our college and in general in the world. And what you really want to do is convey meaning, the semantic meaning inside of your code. So the bold tag has been deprecated. You're not supposed to use it. There are better options now. But yeah, this sample code that I wrote uses it, just so that you would ask that question.
And most browsers will still respect it because they're forgiving.
Yeah, very forgiving. Because they're still showing web pages that were built 20, 30 years ago. It's one of the best parts of the web. It keeps working. All right. Well, I think everyone gets the gist of this assignment. The only thing that I didn't really do is I didn't bold the problems in here, but as you can imagine, you could bold it, you could change the color, you could add highlighting. So that really points out my problem. And then in the speaker notes at the bottom, you could say that the href attribute is missing on the third link. The link doesn't appear as clickable. I have no idea if that typing is actually going to show up because my computer is so tied up right now. Okay, yeah, it did show up. Good. So that's what that assignment is about. Make sure that when you're done with finding all those errors, you share it and paste the share link into Moodle to turn in the assignment. I think this assignment is fun. If you are overwhelmed by it, just like Anthony said, step away. Maybe do an error like every hour or every day of the week. You still have a lot of time before it's due. So try to make it fun.
But don't expect some frustration. It's not a bad thing. But how you deal with it is the most important thing. So don't measure your success by how frustrated you are. It's okay to be frustrated and just take a breath and come back.
Sometimes I lose sight of that too, Anthony.
I know you do.
All right. So our last topic today. Now that you've met Adam, you're reading HTML, we want to talk about some big concepts that you need to know. So I'm in the presentation now, Anthony. Hopefully you can get that up on your screen too. Oh yeah, you have it open, it looks like.
I'm there.
Chapter 3 is actually a chapter that my Web Design 2 students reread this semester. Because what's great about the internet is it's no longer one of those beige boxes on your desk. I believe mobile traffic has now officially outpaced desktop traffic on websites. So more people are using mobile devices, from iPads to iPhones to Android devices, to visit websites, in many cases than using a desktop to access it. Now that might not be true for every site. I know that our stats at mid skew a little bit differently. We have a lot of computer labs, so we still see a lot of students using the desktop. But a good 20 to 30, maybe even 40% when I'm looking at the stats for who's using Moodle or who's using our website, it's mobile phones and it's tablets. And we don't know where the web's going to go. There are refrigerators that you can buy that include a web browser. I'm sure there are cars that have web browsers. Doesn't the Tesla have a browser, Anthony? Do you know?
No, I don't know.
I feel like it must. I do know that um, the size of screens is really all over the place, and yet we still all use the same internet. So a long time ago, we had to realize that we couldn't make assumptions about who was using our web pages. We couldn't guarantee that they were on broadband, and we can't guarantee that they're going to be able to see a lot of the screen at once, because honestly, they might be on a phone or something even smaller. So a couple of the quotes that are textbook references I'm sharing here as well. Stephen Hayes says that there's no mobile web at all. There is only the web that we see in different ways. There's no desktop web or tablet web or mobile web. It is just the web, and that was the way the web was intended to be, and it's the way the web continues to be. Right before this live stream, I sent Anthony a link to a web page, and it worked on his watch. When I first made this slide, they were previewing it, but what was it like browsing the web on your watch, Anthony?
It was pretty cool, but not the best.
It's not great.
But it
No,
was
you can't zoom around or click too many times, but you can see web pages on a tiny little screen on your wrist. So how do we deal with the fact that your web page is going to be shown on dozens of different screen sizes? Well, there's a couple concepts or techniques that you can use called progressive enhancement and responsive web design. These are pretty big topics. I want you to be aware of them right now. If you take web design 2, you are going to spend several weeks building a responsively designed website. So what is progressive enhancement? It boils down to making sure that the core value of your website, the content, is written in a way that will work on browsers today and browsers tomorrow. And if you are aware of certain features that would make your website work better, you can actually add them in without breaking the core content. And it's all about sticking to standards. The worldwide consortium, the W3C, is who is in charge of setting the standards that all the browsers makers from Google to Microsoft to Apple will adopt in their browsers. And so there's some cool things coming along.
Sorry, I know I'm interrupting you, but
Yeah.
I gotta put this in. Our position is that we second that joke. Please continue.
Oh, I just saw the joke in the chat room. I appreciate that.
I'm sorry.
Progressive enhancement. So, here's an example of progressive enhancement. You have always been able to fill out forms online, maybe register for an event, and you have to type in a date, right? That's always been something that you could do. But wouldn't it be nice if there was a way to visually pick a date? Well, that's something that the W3C has made a standard for, and browsers are taking their time implementing different ways of entering dates. So here's an example of a date field on the far left. I believe it's in Chrome. When you click on it, it actually brings up this little calendar view that you can go forward and backward in. And if you do that in Firefox, it has some color coding, which is a little bit nicer. Safari doesn't have it on the desktop, but on mobile, they actually open up a panel underneath that lets you slide between months and days and years really quickly. So I think this is interesting that they're taking a standard from the W3C, which is a field can be a date, and they are progressively enhancing it to do more in some browsers. But that doesn't mean this won't work on a desktop Safari or an Internet Explorer 11. You can type it in. It just has to be a date when it's on these other browsers. So if you're writing a web page, and as we do this for the mid website, you want to focus first on your content, writing the HTML about your content in a logical order and putting the meaning in tags, like organizing it into an outline, for instance, so that there's a heading 1, and then the subsections have heading 2s, and then the sections underneath those have heading 3s. If you write your HTML in a logical order like that, then anything that visits it, whether that's Google's bot or Yahoo or Bing or whoever crawls your website, is going to be able to understand it. And anyone who uses it, whether they're using like a screen reader or a watch, is going to be able to read that content. get the content right first. Then you can use those new features. You can apply CSS on top of it to make it look cool. Um, you want to make sure that the core content is there and focus first on that. And that's why we're learning HTML first. Anything you want to add about progressive enhancement, Anthony?
No.
Okay.
But we did have a question about Apple and their desktop browser versus their mobile browser. Aren't they making attempts to make those very similar?
Yeah, they're the same engine. In fact, I would say that the reason Safari might feel fast or um, doesn't use as much memory or saves battery life on the desktop is because it's the same browser engine that runs on the phone. Um, when they add features to Safari on the phone, it's there on the desktop as well. So there's definitely a lot of overlap there. I don't know if that means that the UI is going to be the same. Apple's been a stickler for making each device have its own strengths. Like you'll notice that there is no way to touch your iMac screen currently. Now, who knows if that will ever change, but uh, there's definitely some convergence happening. What do you think? In another couple of years, Anthony, you'll be able to touch an iMac?
I'll put you a lunch on it.
We have an ongoing bet, students. I just wanted to mention that. Okay, let's talk about responsive design because this is where the web really is going right now. How do you know if a web developer is someone who designs responsively? Well, if you stand over their shoulder, watch how they use a website. They use a website much more differently than anyone else who browses. You know, they don't scroll up and down around. Actually, what they do is they grab the corner of the window and they resize it up and down. And a responsively designed website that fits multiple screen sizes is going to shuffle around, maybe hide and show certain content, collapse certain content, so that when it's on a mobile aspect ratio, like this skinny little phone view I'm looking at right now, all the same content is there, but it's organized in a way that is much more appropriate to a phone. And when you make it larger, like let's say if I get to this breakpoint right about here, you'll see that more information starts to show up, things get smaller, make room for the content. That's what responsive design is. Now it's kind of a joke that I resize the screen that way, but it's all about maximizing the viewport that a device sees. There was an older approach. In fact, I think Facebook might still use this, where you would actually just build a completely different website so that if someone is visiting from a phone, you forward them to a separate mobile.facebook.com, or m dot is what it was called. m.facebook.com was their mobile view. And Facebook had to actually maintain two separate versions of their site for that. In some ways that might be easier, but in a lot of ways it's easy for those two apps to, or those two sites to diverge over time. And so at least for the Mid-Michigan College website, we've chosen to adopt responsive design. So we only have to make one web page, and the CSS that we've written allows it to look one way on mobile. And as more and more space is available on bigger screens, we use it differently. Do you want to add anything about responsive design, Anthony?
Just that the older approach, the MDOT approach, can be very irritating. Um, in the Apple mobile, you have an option to fake out the website so that they think that you're not a mobile device. So they'll give you the full desktop advice uh, version, and that's because of that irritation. Oftentimes the MDOT site just doesn't have the full functionality, and you want that. The approach to responsive design is really taking care of that, and it's a lot more planning. The amount of work that they go through just on our website to make sure that everything's going to work on different sizes, it's a lot more work, but it's a much better user experience. It's worth doing.
Definitely. There was a good question in the chat room about whether there's a way to test your site at different screen sizes. Yes, there is a way, and we're going to show you that in a couple weeks, I promise you. And actually, you don't even have to add an extension. It's built
Uh,
into Chrome and Safari. So if you contact me on Slack, I'll give you a preview of it early if you want. But let's move on to accessibility. This is one of the most important topics in the chapter. It's the right thing to do to consider that there are going to be no barriers that prevent your website from working for everyone who might be using it. Um, Now, if you think of accessibility, you might immediately think of screen readers. They're definitely associated with accessibility, but that's not the only thing to keep in mind. I love this graphic from the Microsoft Inclusive Design Toolkit. Um, I bet you can relate to one of these little pictograms. You might have had something that temporarily affected you. I know I started using the web a lot differently when I had a baby. I would wake up in the middle of the night in a dark room, and I was busy in one hand and I'd use my phone in another. So suddenly I'm using the web a lot differently. I'm on a smaller screen. I only have one hand. I can't have the volume up because I don't want to wake a baby. So I would start turning on closed captioning. And actually, to this day, I leave closed captioning on all the time because I found out that I actually understand better um, when I'm reading as well as hearing. So, accessibility is about making sure that whatever is on your website, whatever the content is, it can be accessed by anyone. And there's a lot of technology built into our phones and our tablets and our computers that make this a lot easier. There's a reader mode in Safari where if you're on a really long web page, you hit a button and it will take all the text that you're trying to read in the article and make the text much larger, get rid of all the distracting background colors, and just focus on the text. That's an accessibility feature. Um, in iOS, there's a way to have whatever is on that piece of glass that you're using actually read aloud to you. And you just tap on the screen and it will read what's underneath your finger. And that's pretty cool too. What do you want to add about accessibility, Anthony? We're dealing with this a lot about at mid, right?
yeah, you're okay. I'm seeing the slide now. Um, it's for us. Part of it is a legal issue in that we're required to provide accessible content, but this slide hits it in that it's the right thing to do. It doesn't just help people with disabilities. Like Brandon said, there's lots of situations that you could probably imagine where you would have benefited from somebody taking the time to make sure that their content was accessible. But it's also preparing us for the future because there's going to be a lot of ways that content might be displayed differently. We touched on different devices. So accessibility is something that everybody benefits from, and it takes a little more time to think about all of those different situations, but the end result is better for everybody.
Yeah. The next slide is about the law requirement, and I want to show that too.
Yeah.
But when I talk about closed captioning, that's a transcript that's added to a video. I think that could benefit everyone, and we try to add it to our videos because you might be able to actually just search for what you want in a video more easily if you add that. And I think that's a nice benefit as well. So it is the law. It's called Section 508. I think this is mentioned in the book. And the MID website falls underneath Section 508. We receive federal funds, so we are required to make our website meet accessibility guidelines. And we did receive a complaint at the college from the Office of Civil Rights, and we're working through making sure and revamping our sites to adhere to the guidelines that we've agreed upon meeting. And we've chosen the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, version 2. I think 2.1 is coming out soon too, where we have agreed that we're going to try to align our website to these guidelines. One of those guidelines is actually color contrast. So this is a graphic from a tool that we use to scan our website, and it keeps track of our compliance. You'll see that we made a change. This is actually over a year ago to our website. We actually picked different colors because some of the blues that we were using on white were not a high enough contrast ratio that people might not be able to detect and read that text at the sizes that we were using. So sometimes making a site more accessible just has to do with picking colors, and you can see that we're making good progress on that. Someone asked, wouldn't transcripts on a video help with SEO? And that is absolutely true. If Google can understand what's in your video, they're going to feature it better or maybe put it in search results. So there are good marketing reasons for doing accessibility as well. One of the last topics in our textbook is site performance. No one likes waiting for a website to load. I think I mentioned this already, actually. Someone asked if that the tabbing and indentation mattered. I tried to hint that actually many people remove all the white space from a document as an extreme measure to try to get the most out of performance. Our website is not the fastest website. Midmich.edu is pretty slow right now. It keeps me up at night. We are working on a brand new website, and you can kind of see a preview of that on our Pathways website. When I click this link, it's going to snap into view, I hope. There we go. Forget the fact that my computer fans are spinning, but it loaded the website pretty quick. We are trying to build a website that is as fast as this. Because as you click on each link, we want the transition to be immediate. When you click on a course, we want that information to appear. We want the information about the course to be fast. So this is something that is an ongoing project for us at the college. And I hope that you will enjoy the fruits of that labor very, very soon. We're going to look at tools later on this semester for inspecting a website and seeing how fast it is. I wanted to show you this view, though, because it includes what's called a waterfall chart. And this is showing our front page of our website. You'll see that there's an image in here called HRA Media Day. This is an image we were showing last year when I took the screenshot. It's 1.4 megabytes. On my fast internet connection, it only took like a second or 2 seconds to download, but that would take a significant amount of the whole page load. And so if we could shrink down that image, it would speed up that experience. So the waterfall chart is a great way to look at what are the performance bottlenecks. What can you improve to speed up the whole web page? And so if you take a look at the waterfall chart for the Pathways website, the bars look longer, but they're actually pretty well balanced. Everything here, instead of being in seconds, it's in milliseconds. So instead of like 1 or 2 seconds to download something, it took essentially a tenth or 100 milliseconds, a tenth of a second to load. And that's where we're trying to get to right now. That is my last topic. Is there anything you want to say about performance, Anthony?
Performance is important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very insightful. Thank you. That's everything we have planned. Are there any questions in the chat room that we want to go over right now? I'm going to pull up the task list while we wait.
Looks like we're good. I think we hit them all.
There's a lot going on this week. I think this is one of the few weeks where we do 3 chapters at once, but it's because they're all so related. I think we've covered Chapter 3 really well, so you can handle that quiz. Chapter 4 and 5 are all about coding, so practice, practice, practice. Spread it over a couple days. That tag challenge, troubleshooting challenge is going to be a lot of fun and a different way to think about the code. I don't see any other questions in the chat.
No, we got one.
Oh, what's the question?
I don't know if this is the original material, like the cells may have been replaced, but for a long time, at various sizes.
Oh, the question was about the beard. I'm sorry.
My daughter is in her 30s, but when she was a baby, then I shaved it off one time, and she cried, and I never shaved it again. I don't know if she would cry today, but she might. That's all the questions.
That's all the questions. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see you next week.